corner of the country. This is true a national conference call. I'm joining you from my Denver office. We have several of the Welcoming America staff on the line from our Atlanta headquarters. And we are also joined by guest speakers Bob Montgomery from San Diego and Jan Reeves from Boise. First, to kick us off, we'd like to turn to Washington, D.C., where we'll hear from Magda Belay from the Office of Refugee Resettlement, the funder of this work. Magda?
Okay. Thanks, Ann. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are excited to have Welcoming America as our new TA provider to provide training on community engagement. I encourage you to visit ORR's website to find out the type of services that Welcoming America and other TA providers provide, and also to get an update on ORR activities and other useful resources. Thank you, Susan, and everyone for your time and interest.
Thank you, Magda. And we have an ambitious webinar agenda today and several areas we are eager to cover with you over this next hour. We also want to leave time for your questions and comments at the end. Our desired outcomes for the call are for you to know more about the resources available from Welcoming America that can help you foster positive local climates for refugees, recognize why community building is important, develop a shared understanding of the methods that work to build understanding and support for refugees, and to find out how you can stay engaged in this work with Welcome America and others in the network interested in advancing welcoming efforts. We'll be sharing information about our technical assistance resources. Welcome America has developed some important goals to guide this technical assistance program, and most of these speak for themselves, so I'd like to spend a little extra time explaining the first. One of the most important goals is to create what we call a community of practice among organizations that work with refugees. We recognize that the organizations and individuals on this call today already seek to engage the broader community in their work to some extent. But I've also heard that there's so much more to be done. This community building work needs to be ongoing, and the promising practices that are out there, the untold story of all that is going so well in resettlement, needs to be lifted up. We believe this grant will give us the opportunity to bring together individuals and organizations that want to work together and learn from each other about what is working, explore shared challenges, and help develop new tools. We elevate the wisdom that already exists in the field and create as much potential for collaboration as we can. So how to get there? Well, here you can see how Welcome America is rolling out its technical assistance program. We've done by assessing needs through key informant interviews with some of the nation's top leaders in the refugee network. Learn from state refugee coordinators, national resettlement agencies, ethnic-based community organizations, and other technical assistance providers about current strengths and what more could be done to improve receptivity to refugees. But I also want to hear from you. Last week, we sent out a link to an online survey asking people like you to let us know their greatest priorities for technical assistance. If you've yet done so, we hope you'll complete this survey and feel free to forward it to your networks so that we can get the most thorough feedback possible. Community engagement is a pretty broad topic, so your input is important to us because we want this technical assistance to be as relevant as it can be. Now, learn from the key informants and the online survey will in turn inform our virtual training topics. You'll continue to have opportunities approximately every 4 to 6 weeks to participate in webinars that will be devoted to specific issues related to community engagement. Each webinar will then be followed by a chance to continue the conversation by joining a learning circle. Learning circles will be held quarterly in a conference call format and include a smaller group of people who want to explore a topic in greater depth. Learning circle participants will be able to share successes and frustrations around specific areas, hear from national and local experts in a particular field, examine useful tools, or identify tools that should be created. We are excited about the participatory nature of the learning circles and will be using your feedback from the survey to inform their development. Now, webinar and learning circle topic we've already identified are community action plans. We are partnering with Boise, Idaho to help other communities that would like to consider a comprehensive planning approach that brings together many different community sectors to learn from Boise's model. You'll hear a bit more about that from Jan Reeves a little later on this call. Now, while technical assistance is designed to maximize technology, Welcoming America will offer an in-person master training class in the fall for champions of community engagement who are interested in fine-tuning their engagement skills and who can commit to going back to their own communities and training others on these approaches. We'll be sharing more with you about this opportunity in the coming months. Welcoming America is also providing technical assistance in the form of a rapid response team, lending advice and support to communities that may find resistance to refugees starting to bubble up. We're able to work with a handful of communities that would benefit from an outside neutral convener. We'll hear from you about pressing situations where Welcoming America's help might be of most benefit. We'll be identifying and developing new tools to improve outreach and engagement with receiving communities. We'll also continue to communicate with you through our growing website devoted to promising practices in fostering community support for refugees. We want to feature your voices and examples on this site. You can also expect to receive regular email updates from us and invitations to join webinars like this one. Growing network of organizations, cities, and communities promote welcoming work, and we will keep you abreast of other ways to stay connected to Welcoming America. And finally, we'll be weaving evaluation into all of our technical assistance. We'll be starting by asking you to complete a short online survey following the webinar. Let us know how we're doing so that we're in the best position to help you create community change. So now you've gotten a sense about the technical assistance that Welcoming America is offering, and I'd just like to take a step back, make sure we have a common understanding of why this work is so important and why it's been elevated in recent years. It's perhaps of no surprise to anyone on the call that in the last 20 years, our demographics have changed dramatically in this country, particularly with the arrival of immigrants and refugees to new non-traditional gateways. Newcomers are coming to places like Lewiston, Maine, Clarkston, Georgia, Cactus, Texas, and Boise, Idaho, amongst so many others. Sometimes these changes are difficult for longer-term members of communities to accept. They not understand why their new neighbors are here. Cultural and even religious differences can get in the way of getting to know their new neighbors. At times the result is ambivalence on the part of the receiving community and even fear. However, we at Welcoming America believe that a new opportunity is emerging to help build understanding and a broader base of support. We believe that by focusing intentional effort on the concerns of receiving community members and helping them understand how much they have in common with their new neighbors, so much more is possible. Our focus is not on direct service provision to refugees. Rather, it is a focus on the broader receiving community, listening to and responding to the concerns and fears that people may have. Our focus in particular is on the unsure and the untapped. Sure, the 60% of Americans who aren't really sure what to think of newcomers, and the untapped, those who would be positively inclined but really haven't been involved in community building efforts with refugees. We know there are effective ways to proactively reach out and help create greater understanding by focusing on these two groups. What we found through research and from on-the-ground practice is that this receiving communities model has the potential to help transform our communities. It consists of three components: connections between newcomers and longer-term residents who typically have little ongoing interaction with each other; leadership, engage mainstream leaders who have credibility with the broader community and are an important voice to extol the benefits of demographic change; And communications. Use messages and communication strategies that help the community recognize how demographic change brings opportunity. Just a minute to go through each of these in a little bit more detail. First, why do we focus on contact building? Well, it's known that an important way to reduce the anxieties that different people feel towards each other is to bring them into meaningful contact. Contact theory, a branch of social psychology, has studied this relationship. There are a variety of ways that organizations and communities are trying to build meaningful contact between newcomers and native-born Americans. Service projects, like this community gardening one, allow people to work side by side on a common interest so that they get to know each other over time and recognize their commonalities. Possibilities for bringing refugees and native-born Americans together are truly endless. We feature some of the work you've been doing in this area and invite you to reach out after the webinar and share your promising practices. These are another appealing way to build contact, especially for those who may not have time for an ongoing commitment. Welcome America has identified several dialogue curricula that are useful, and we have a dialogue toolkit available on our website. We have many examples of testimonials from people who left dialogues feeling that the safe space that was established and the opportunity to listen to others and to be listened to had really challenged their assumptions and opened up their minds to newcomers. Second strategy is communications. Now, everyone on this call communicates about their work in some way, through how they describe it to friends and family, or on their organization's website, or through everyday interactions with the receiving community. Find ways to change the narrative about refugees, especially in places where there is more pushback, is important. Local communication campaigns are effective, though admittedly they can be time-intensive and can be expensive. But working closely with the local media and doing that in collaboration with other community spokespeople, service providers, is important. I also think the arts are a great way to get the word out through music, visual arts, and theater. So how does talk about our work so that it resonates with the unsure? We've learned that we need to start with messages that connect people, that let them see themselves in the community vision, much like this Nebraska billboard does. Every community is different, so messages that resonate in New York may be fairly different from what resonates in Spokane. Think the shared values in your community and how the refugee story connects with those. The strategy is leadership engagement. This is a tough one, and there is no one approach that works. It requires thinking out who has power and influence in your community and might be positively inclined towards your work. Who might be a positive, credible voice for refugees? Perhaps lucky enough to have the support of your local mayor. How do you strengthen and capitalize on that support and tap into the mayor's other influential contacts? Perhaps it's a bank president who adopted a child from another country. Perhaps it's a business owner who has employed refugees. Taking the time and effort to continue to reach out and engage these potential partners is time-consuming, but we think well worth the effort in the long term. We've begun to scratch the surface today on these three strategies, and rest assured we'll be featuring them in greater depth in upcoming webinars and learning circles. Wanted to give you a foundation and an introduction for the work that Welcoming America promotes. To turn to some of the leaders in the field, people who have worked with refugees and receiving communities for years and can provide some perspective on why this work is so important. We'll try to start with Bob Montgomery, who is the Executive Director of the San Diego International Rescue Committee and a 2011 winner of the Migration Policy Institute's E Pluribus Unum Prize for Excellence in Immigrant Integration. I know we've had a couple difficulties getting Bob on the call. I'm not sure he's on yet, so is Bob there? I don't think we have Bob yet, so I think what I'd like to do is skip ahead to Jan Reeves. Jan will give us his perspective as the Idaho State Refugee Coordinator, and he will share how the people of Boise came together to address concern and develop an action plan. Jan.
Thanks, and thanks to MACTA and the Office of Refugee Resettlement as well for supporting this webinar and for bringing many of our colleagues around the country together on a topic of such obvious interest. This I have to share is really one of bringing people with good minds and good hearts together at a time of crisis to deal and resolve some serious problems. Most of us work really hard to avert crises, and absolutely, without question, prevention is the best cure. But just times when crises overtake us and all we can do is act. I'm going to quote Rahman, you all here, as many of you know, former White House Chief of Staff and Mayor of Chicago, who famously said, "Never let a serious crisis go to waste." Our crisis in Boise doesn't quite compare to the 2008 financial collapse that Ron was talking about, but we have taken his sage advice to heart. I have just a few minutes to explain what this plan is and how it came about. As the clunky name implies, it's a community ownership model, a strategic resource planning, and partnership development that emerged in my hometown of Boise during the first half of 2009. Now, we knew at all about strategic planning and partnership formation. I'm sure everyone on the call has either led such efforts or has been involved in them time and time again. What was territory for us, though, was applying these approaches to the community-wide problem of refugee integration. At Boise had been experiencing historically high numbers of refugee arrivals without any major issues until recession hit, and the community was suffering, and job opportunities disappearing fast. The safety net for newly arrived refugees quickly became totally inadequate, and to make matters worse, mainstream resources were stretched beyond their ability to provide the level of support demanded by this new economic reality. As a result, many reasonable, responsible, and otherwise supportive members of the community started to ask how they were supposed to deal with the multiple and seemingly endless needs of so many families. Community support was ebbing away. There was this growing perception that the community's capacity to absorb refugees had reached a critical tipping point. Boise Mayor Dave Beater was getting phone calls. The public school system was operating in crisis mode because of the impact of refugee kids on some of the schools. I was getting calls from the superintendent of schools, and of potential massive refugee homelessness were flying around. It's understandable that all of these forces would lead to the idea that imposing practical limits on resettlement made sound economic sense. I'm sure it sounds familiar to many of you because I know Boise hasn't been alone in experiencing this kind of public concern. So anyway, after several meetings and talks over coffee with the mayor's staff, we agreed that the mayor would convene a broad-based group of community stakeholders, city government folks, refugee service providers, and refugees to get a handle on the capacity problem and find a way forward towards some real solutions. It became obvious very quickly that many community stakeholders did not adequately understand the rationale or the process of refugee settlement and did not know who were coming as refugees or why. The most immediate need of this group was for information and education. Now, I realize that this may sound awfully simplistic to many of you on the call, but I swear this is how it happened. After gaining much clearer understanding of the refugee resettlement process and the compelling need for host communities like Boise to provide opportunities for protection through resettlement, the group easily agreed that imposing limits on the number of refugees was not the answer. The issue to be dealt with was really the availability of resources, and that capacity could grow if resources were better identified, better coordinated, and more strategically deployed to address the underlying problems facing refugees. I'm going into any of the details here of the planning process or the structure and implementation of the plan. These can be discussed at another time. For now, I just want to say that two of the most important lessons we've learned through this initiative have been: one, communication and understanding of refugee issues is fundamental to the development of productive partnerships needed to foster the integration effort. And two, developing strong, supportive partnerships can help frame the dialogue, moving away from how do we limit the number of refugees coming into our community to how can we be more strategic to ensure that our capacity continues to grow. So I just want to thank everyone on the call, and I'll turn the mic back to Susan so we can move on with Welcoming America.
Great, thanks, Jan. And again, we'll be featuring more of Boise's work in an upcoming webinar and a learning circle, and there'll be an opportunity for communities that want to study the example in more detail and think about ways to replicate portions of it to do that through this technical assistance. I'm so delighted that we have Bob on the phone. And again, just to reiterate, Bob is with the International Rescue Committee in San Diego, and they are a 2011 winner of the Migration Policy Institute's E Pluribus Unum Prize. So Bob, thanks so much for hanging in there and for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing your voice.
Hear me?
Well, I can.
Very good, and I apologize to everyone for the technical difficulties. I'll share a story with your listeners today about things in San Diego and something that happened some years ago that got me started into thinking more about community integration and what IRC as a resettlement agency could do to improve our involvement with the local communities that we were resettling refugees in. In the mid-90s, IRC was funded by the Office of Refugee Resettlement, an after-school program that we called Students Plus, educated on the campus, one of our local high schools, the high school that was in a neighborhood where many of our refugees were being resettled. So refugees made up a large portion of the high school, and the program was in its early years was quite successful in providing academic assistance and community engagement projects with the refugee teens that were attending the school. And of course, we were quite proud of the program on the campus. I was at the campus and I was approached by the principal of the school, and I thought he was going to, congratulate IRC on the fine work that we were doing in his school. Unfortunately, it was quite the opposite. Bob, your program is not part of the solution, it's part of the problem. And I was shocked because I thought we had an excellent program. But the principal went on to tell me that the reason he said this was that because our program was specifically for refugees. We didn't serve any of the other kids in the school. But kids in the school recognized that we had an excellent program. Many of them wanted to join, but were prevented from joining. The problem that we had was we were funded, as I mentioned, by the Office of Refugee Resettlement. Mandated at that point to be able to serve refugees. But I understood what the principal was telling me. And so I went back and we talked with staff and we decided that indeed the principal was right. And we're putting a wedge between the refugee students who were trying to integrate into the school, but the other mainstream kids there but couldn't access our program. So we immediately looked for ways to diversify our funding base so we could include non-refugee kids, immigrants, mainstream kids, all and refugees in the program. We did that. We dramatic change in the ability of the refugee kids to begin to integrate into the school, and that the acceptance of our program by the school officials, and the being to build harmony between refugee kids and the mainstream kids that were all attending the same school. So also launched myself into thinking about other ways that we needed to, as a resettlement agency, engage in the community. And now many of our programs serve refugees and non-refugees alike, and that thus be viewed more positively as a in the community as someone who is just resettling refugees, only paying attention to refugees, and not adding any value to the community at large. That's what I wanted to share with everyone today, and I'll be staying on the call and happy to answer any questions when we're done, and I'll turn it back to Susan.
Well, thank you, Bob, and thank you again, Jan. And everyone, I would encourage you, I'm sure that you have questions for both of our speakers. Please your Q&A bar on the webinar, and feel free to send them in now, and we'll be going through your questions at the end of the call. I'd also like to invite those of you who have models of receiving communities engagement to share those with us. Please send them in because we're going to be looking for opportunities to feature more examples, and we'd like to hear from you. So please feel free to let us know about the great work you're doing to engage receiving communities. Now, before we open it up to your questions, I'd like to first advance the slides. I'd like to close with giving you a little bit of background on Welcoming America and our organization. We are a national organization focused on building greater understanding between U.S. and foreign-born Americans. We have Welcoming America affiliates in 23 different communities across the country, and we also work with a growing number of organizations like those on the call today that are interested in building a greater base of support for new Americans. Are in Tennessee and the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition, where community members recognized they needed to take a more proactive approach to addressing immigrant backlash by building understanding between everyday people. This is, as many of you may have seen profiled in the film Welcome to Shelbyville. And really from that proactive work that a news story of Tennessee emerged, of people paying taxes, wanting to contribute, working hard, and calling America their home. This story that communities across the country wanted to replicate, and Welcoming America was created to help that story grow. Welcoming America's national desk now provides training and support to a variety of thought leaders and practitioners. Some of the tools we offer are already available for you on our website, and I'd like to point out just a few in particular. First, All Immigration is Local provides the research and demographic arguments for working with receiving communities to support immigration. Receiving Communities Toolkit highlights promising practices and lessons learned from the growing field of organizations working to improve receptivity to newcomers. So we encourage you to check these out on our website at welcomingamerica.org. Build Nation of Neighbors is an online training module based on the Welcome to Shelbyville film that helps organizations learn how to put some of these welcoming ideas into practice. Friends of Welcoming is a way for individuals to connect to this work and model welcoming in their own personal lives. It provides ideas and examples of how to get started with this approach. Those are a great way for you to get to know our work better, and we want to get to know your work better. First, we want to hear from you and encourage you to complete our Technical Assistance Needs Survey. The link to that survey is on this slide. If you haven't received an invitation, we'd encourage you to jot down this link and fill it out at your convenience. Also, just by signing up for this webinar, we'll be placing our email list so that you can stay abreast of updates and new opportunities. If you have promising practices to share related to building meaningful contact, leadership engagement, or communication strategies, we invite you to share those with us through email. We will be featuring some of the top promising practices on our new refugee-focused website, and we hope you will continue to connect with us through webinars, learning circles, and other mechanisms. Please feel free to drop me or Hannah Carswell, our program manager, an email anytime with your questions, examples, suggestions, or concerns. We want to build this community of practice together, and we need your help. I'd like to take questions and comments from the audience, so please take a moment to type in your questions and on the toolbar, and we'll have Rachel Stenhart, Welcoming America's Deputy Director, moderate this Q&A portion of the call. Rachel?
Thanks, and good afternoon, everyone. We are getting some great questions, and I encourage everyone to please chime in. I'm going to be starting with a question for Jan here. And the participant points out that the population of Boise is about 250,000 people and asks, at what point is the community too large for a single community action plan? Instead is maybe better served by integrated plans for multiple sectors. So, Jan, could you speak to that a little bit?
Is that a shot? Sure. Really, our plan is really an integrated plan of from multiple sectors. I didn't go into the details of the plan during my part of the presentation, but we have essentially 6 plans within the entire plan. And these 6 plans are around education, employment, healthcare, social integration, transportation, and housing. So each of these 6 sectors of our plan has an overarching goal and a set of objectives that deal specifically with each of those sectors. So I don't know the answer to the question of at what point does a community become too large, but I would say that our plan really is best described as an integrated plan for multiple sectors than a single plan.
Great, Dan. So I'm going to ask the next question first of Bob and then Jan, because I think it is a really important one that probably is something that both of you have encountered in your work. And the participant says, I find that Americans who participate in these meaningful cross-cultural encounters are the people who are already interested. In other words, it can be preaching to the choir. Do you have any suggestions about how to move past this audience and really focus on, I'll use Welcoming America language here, the folks that we call the unsure, people who may be beyond the choir?
Okay, that's a good question, and I'm not sure I have a great answer, but I would say that in San Diego, recently we've seen a large influx of refugees from Iraq over the last 5 years. And it's great impact on the school district and healthcare providers and other institutions in one particular community in San Diego area. So one of the first things we did, there was a fair amount of criticism, especially regarding the impact on resources from the general community. So I think the first thing we had to do was educate the community about who refugees were and why these people were coming to their community. We had to do a lot of outreach, both directly through meetings, but also using the media as well, working with government officials, districts, community or health clinics, and like. I think the other thing that we did was our main office was not in that community, and we immediately opened an office in that community and began to interact with other community players, introduce ourselves to the other community players, and explain what resources we had and how we could assist them with challenges they were facing with such a large influx. We created a collaborative of these organizations so that we could better keep them informed of arrival patterns and other challenges that this new group was bringing. So it was incumbent upon ourselves to reach to those who maybe didn't know why the refugees were there, and just through education, to try to encourage them to support the effort that we were undertaking to help people that clearly had been displaced and not return home. and on that work, I think we have a much more welcoming community than we had when we started.
Bob, and would you respond to that?
In a similar way, I think, first of all, at a couple of different levels, I'd like to address the question. The first would be, we were successful to some degree, in fact, I think to a significant degree, in engaging community partners that were not already partners, that were seeing that they were encountering refugees in their daily work. They weren't sure exactly how refugees got into our community. They didn't know exactly how to assess their needs. There was a struggle on the part of some mainstream providers when our economy began to into the base that they were seeing more and more people that they had not really encountered before because there had not been so much need before. And these were some of the people that became our best partners. And one example of this was the United Way in our local Treasure Valley, which is the larger metropolitan area that we reside in, that previously had not really had as much opportunity to encounter refugees, but was seeing more and more of that and really seeking ways that they can be of assistance. Now, I think in any partnership, it has to be give and take. You have to be able to provide something of value to a partner just as you're hoping that they will be able to provide something of value to you. And if it's this two-way street of mutually beneficial in relationships, then it's not going to go very far. At the personal level, I'd go back to what Sue's saying about the strategy of meaningful contact. I'd address this in my presentation, and our plan didn't really specifically seek to urge opportunities or create new opportunities for mainstream population and refugee populations to find ways to interact, but there are a couple of anecdotal situations that reflect that. And one is that summer we, with our Refugee School Impact Grant, we organized an international summer school for middle school age kids. And so we had an equal number of refugee children, an equal number of native-born children attending the summer school so that they could have opportunities to interact, get to know each other, make meaningful contact, and make friends. And I think that's by far the best way to nurture the certain about whether or not immigration or refugee resettlement is a good thing or not. And the second anecdotal piece I wanted to add is that part of our plan is the need for transportation for refugees, and we had through outreach we found a driver's education provider for refugees, and this fellow had never met a refugee before, never encountered a refugee, but once he began to teach refugees to drive, it became his passion, and we even were able to create a video, actually a create a video that featured a refugee and this driver's training instructor, and what great friends they became just by an opportunity to get to know each other. So I think the meaningful contact is really the key strategy for convincing the unsure or the untapped.
Great, Jan, and I think that those kinds of stories of impact are incredibly compelling. And so the next question I would like to ask, again, first of Bob and then of Jan, is what kinds of data or anecdotal stories? We know that the work you're both doing is very much at the vanguard. Perhaps it's more complicated now at the beginning, but are there kinds of data that you're collecting on the impact of your work on things like integration or that are of concern and that will help you build your case in the community? And let's start with Bob.
Well, certainly we're more focused on detection and evidence-based programming than we have been in the past. We now use that's called efforts to outcomes, which is us to the effectiveness of programs that we're running. However, I'm not sure that we're at a place yet with this initiative where we can say how it's helping with our integration in the community. I think it's a little premature for that, and we haven't really focused our efforts that way. We do look, though, to see how we're grading within our own office, because that's important to making sure that our clients have access to all the programs we have. But as integration with the community, I don't think we have we haven't developed any hard data on that.
Very understandable. Jan, how about you?
Well, I think it's a similar story for us. We really don't have any good data on integrating indicators. One of the problems we have is that the bulk of our funding, in fact, virtually all of our funding, is to make sure that refugees are successful in terms of self-sufficiency, and it's really a very narrow period of time that we're doing that measurement. It's a matter of a year, maybe 2 years at the most, in most cases. So we really don't have the resources, and we don't have, at this point, the mechanism to track these kinds of integration indicators. But I would point the choir and everyone on the call to the UC Center on Immigration, where they've developed a community scorecard in California, rating community basically on how well they've integrated immigrants within those communities. And it's a very interesting set of data. It's data, I'm not sure where the data originated, but it's like a lot of census data that has taken those communities and done an evaluation of how well immigrants integrate into those communities. That might be a model that we could use in the future.
And Will, if I might add, this whole area of data collection and figuring out how we're making an impact is one that is really ripe for further technical assistance. Welcoming America has done a lot of thinking and work on developing logic models related to this, looking at different indicators, and this is a whole field that we will be spending some more time on in future webinars and learning circles. Help us, continue to know that we're on track when it comes to fostering community engagement and being able to tell the story of the impact that kind of work makes.
Do we have time for one more question, or shall I turn things back over to you?
Why don't I take one more question? That would be great.
Okay. Well, I think there are many there who are interested in the costs and benefits. And so I'm wondering, again, we'll start with you, Bob, and go over to Jan. When you talk about the work that you have done, I'm sure there was a significant investment of time and resources. In what way do you feel like those have paid dividends in the end?
You want to start?
Yes, you could, Bob. That would be great.
I think that the integration efforts, we first changed our image in the community from an international organization that only has a focus on bringing people into a community and helping them for a very short time and then leaving them to create an image of being a key partner. And what that has also done is helped us to access local resources, local funding that we previously didn't have access to because, again, people did see us as a community-based organization that was focused on a wider view of the community and neighborhood. We've been able to make that change. Clearly, I can see the benefits of the work that we've done with outreaching and working to help better train refugees into mainstreams of their communities, providing services that refugees and non-refugees alike can take advantage of. Other things that I think the efforts are definitely providing the outcomes they want and making it cost-effective and welcomed results.
here. And how about you, Jan?
It's to the cost of our initiative. We've been actively involved in it for 4 years. We do have a facilitator and implementation coordinator on contract to make sure that the objectives of the plan are being pursued actively and that results are coming from those objectives and action steps that are being implemented. So it's the actual dollar cost of that is about $20,000 a year. I think our overall cost at the initial part was probably closer to maybe $20,000 in the first year. So we did expend some dollars to make this happen. But more than that, we have 25, 30 different agencies and organizations, schools, universities involved in the first stages of our development through the implementation, and over 100 and maybe more at this point in time, individuals involved in some phase or some part of implementing the plan. And the cost of that time and effort is impossible to determine. I would say that many people are doing this work as part of their regular job, and so it's maintaining, it's being sustained basically by the energy and the dedication that people who are implementing it are contributing to it. In terms of cost-benefit analysis, it's again very difficult to determine, but I think that we see anecdotally a lot of awareness about what's happening in the community. We can point to some really important improvements in the resource base for refugees that I know will lead to a better settlement process for many, many people. It's mostly anecdotal, but I help but believe in my heart that it's worth it, every bit of it.
Great. Thank you very much. And Susan, I'm going to turn the floor over to you now.
Great. So now for some closing words. I'd like to wrap up today with this quote from Richard Florida, recognizing how the very future of our country in this globally competitive era depends on willingness to welcome newcomers. He writes, "The growth and development of great cities comes from their ability to harness diversity, welcome newcomers, and turn their energy and ideas into innovations and wealth. This is the untold American success story. You are part of this greater future. Please join with us at Welcoming America, and thank you so much for joining us today. Goodbye."